All right, so here we are. I decided to do my presentation on subsistence, something that kind of interested me throughout this semester. Just kind of want to learn more about that, how they live, stuff like that. I have a couple cousins who are part-time subsistence hunters, lifestyle people. They have a fishing wheel that they're allowed to have. So I just kind of want to learn more about that and see what I could find out. So I start this presentation with trying to figure out exactly what is subsistence hunting or a subsistence lifestyle, I should say, and how that differs from what I know as living more of a Western lifestyle. So I first thought I would go with what we look like. The average American supermarket has 43,000 items in it. That's a ridiculous amount of items. Not all that's food product, of course. You have like toothpaste, deodorant, trash bags, stuff like that. But even if you figure half of those are food, you're still pushing 20,000 items in a grocery store. You can just most of you can walk to a grocery store, drive a couple miles, and you just have at your fingertips thousands upon thousands of food choices. Easy to get. Whereas, in the subsistence lifestyle, you have to work so hard to get all the food and nutrition that you need. So I wanted to kind of compare and see what we have. So I started off with like what subsistence kind of looks like. And with Western expansion, it's not as crucial as it used to be, though it is still readily practiced among numerous villages throughout this state. And it's still very new. The best way, really, for a lot of Native Americans and Alaska Natives to still get their nutrition, because if they do have a store nearby, oftentimes it's one, very expensive to buy food, and two, it's a lot of processed goods that don't hold a lot of nutritional value. That's because shipping fresh produce and all that is really not realistic to most villages. And then a lot of times throughout the winter, some of the natives are far away from these stores. They got to take a snow machine or sled dogs a couple miles to get to the store, and then if the store even happens to have fresh fruits or vegetables, those will succumb to the cold on the way back to the villages. So oftentimes Native Alaskans will just skip that fruit and vegetable part altogether just because the food goes bad and it's so expensive. Here's a couple pictures of subsistence lifestyle here. I thought the whale on the forklift was pretty neat. Never seen anything like that before. And then a man going across the ice there doing a little hunt. So, here are some seals. A lot of people have looked and wondered why. It's kind of like the Inuit paradox is an article I found, and it's wondering how that a culture that eats mostly meat can be so healthy. A lot of sailors coming around the Arctic wondered why they had 0 cases of scurvy, like it didn't exist. And a lot of that had to do with the seal oil and the meat that they eat off of the seal. A lot of the organs are very high in vitamin like A and C, which they need. And since it's common for Native Alaskans to dip their foods in seal oil, this kind of gives them a year-long supply of the vitamins that they need. Cute little animals for the most part, though they can certainly be aggressive. One example I kind of want to move on to is that the natives have a unique perspective on subsistence. Some non-natives look down on subsistence lifestyle or shun the hard work it requires. One quote I found that I really liked was from Chief Seattle. He got an offer from President Franklin Pierce to buy the land of his people. And he said, How can you buy or sell the sky, the warmth of the land? The idea is strange to us, yet we do not own the freshness of the air or the sparkle of the water. How can you buy them from us? Every part of the earth is sacred to my people. Every shining pine needle, every sandy shore, every mist in the dark woods, every clearing and humming insect is holy in the memory and experience of my people. So this just shows that ownership of things, including the land, is just a quality not held by many Native Americans. European Americans, Westerners, often seem so quick to claim ownership, and Native aren't like that. And one example I learned about that outside of Alaska was, here you see a picture of a Hopi farmer and a Navajo sheep herder. And these two tribes live very close together in southwestern United States. And so the Navajos raise their sheep for meat and wool, and the Hopi specialize growing corn, beans, and squash. And these tribes create a surplus in order to trade with one another. So that's kind of neat, I thought. Just the way they kind of coexist and live with each other is that most of the time natives won't create or take more than they need, but in this case, they do create a surplus in order to trade for things that they don't have. One other tribe in South Dakota was called the Lakota, and they live by a 7 generations principle, which basically means that any decision made that will affect resources is based on the outcome that there will be enough of that resource for the next 7 generations. So I think thinking like that would help out modern society a lot. There's a lot of short-sightedness, what can benefit us now, and I think the 7 generations principle is very sound. I just found a little comic here that I thought was kind of funny that related to 7 generations. Moving on. The Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act was a very significant piece of legislation that was introduced and divided the state up into 13 regional corporations. It's kind of controversial in the fact that Native Alaskans received a good amount of land, over 10% of about 10% of Alaska's land was given to them, and they were given monetary value for land that was previously taken from them that ran just shy of $1 billion. So there was significant compensation. However, it did abolish all indigenous fishing and hunting rights. So over the years, you've had the Secretary of the Interior and State of Alaska saying, we're going to do whatever it takes to preserve the indigenous people's subsistence lifestyle, but that hasn't always came to light. It's just mirrored in a muck of politics. The laws are governed by both the state and federal governments. There's a lot of waste and bureaucracy and opposing views, and it's just kind of a mess that hasn't really been sorted out in the way that it should be. Some argue that subsistence takes too many animals and is just, it's an excessive use of gathering food when it's not really needed in the modern world, which I thought is kind of funny because I was looking up things. I found that 4% of the total fish and wildlife harvest is attributed to rural subsistence lifestyle. 1% goes to sport users, which is casual hunters, fishermen, berry pickers, stuff like that. The remaining 95% of the total fish and wildlife harvest is attributed to commercial interests. So we have such this overabundance of especially fishing in the world that goes on. I don't understand how they can say, natives are at their 4% contribution are affecting the animal population so vastly. Sometimes there's been a negative connotation on the word subsistence, as it can be associated with poverty and economic need. So lots of those who participate try to found a different term. Sometimes this is translated to others in different ways. Inupiat leader Eileen McLean said, "Subsistence is not about poverty; it's about wealth. This wealth is expressed in the harvest and in the sharing and celebration that result from that harvest." And piggybacking that, some have offered to change the word subsistence into our way of life or our way of being, to kind of let other non-natives know, and people who don't experience that, just how important it is to natives and their traditions and their culture and their way of life. And I just wanted to end saying that subsistence has been and will continue to be a major part of Native American life. It helps preserve culture. Tradition is the key to survival for many. Typically, the more remote a village or tribe, the more significant subsistence becomes. But that doesn't diminish the link between urban and rural natives, as many have learned the traditional ways, and that is how they pass on their beliefs and ideals and so forth. And with growing populations and climate change abound, more needs to be done to ensure that rural Native Alaskans can obtain what they need, not only to survive, but also to thrive. Thank you for your time, and that is the end of my presentation.